Okay, my clock shows at 7 o'clock. I want to call this organizational meeting of the Board of Supervisors to order. As a county administrator, I'll run the meeting until we elect a chair. I'd like to begin with offering an invocation and lead us all in the Pledge of Allegiance. Our kind and gracious Father in heaven, we are so thankful to be living in this beautiful community with kind people and with dedicated servants. We are thankful for those that serve us, that protect us. Please watch over them and their families. We invite thy spirit here this night, Father, that we might interact with one another with graciousness and kindness, and that we might have thy spirit to infuse in this board wisdom as we deal with the future of the county and make decisions pertinent to it. Please bless us that we might be guided by thy hand in all that we say and do. And we offer this prayer up in the name of thy Son. Amen. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we will open the meeting with nominations for chair. The way we go forward is we take one nomination at a time and then either elect that person or not, and then move on to the next nomination. So I'm open for nominations.
I nominate Mr. Pugh for the position of chair.
There's second for that nomination?
Second.
Okay, all in favor of Mr. Pugh as chair, say aye.
Aye.
None are opposed. Mr. Pugh, I hand the gavel to you.
All right. Well, thank you, board. I appreciate that. Our next matter of business will be the
Election of a vice chair.
election of a vice chair. Are there any motions?
Mr. Chairman, I nominate Mr. Martin.
Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion on the floor. Is Mr. Martin as vice chair? All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Mr. Martin, congratulations.
You can never be absent.
Now, do we have do we got to appoint a clerk?
I'm an appointee. I don't believe you have to appoint. I'm already appointed.
It's not necessary to do so.
So this,
She's already been appointed and she takes that position.
okay, so that's the only two we have.
That's the only two we have to do, chair and vice chair.
Okay, I know sometimes we had to appoint treasurers and all these different things in the past. All right, next we will move on to the appointment of liaisons. We have a list in front of us. We have a plethora of appointments. Planning Commission, Social Services, EMS Board, you name it, School Board. Do you all see the list before you? Do you have any changes, or would you like to go ahead and just reappoint everyone to the boards they are familiar with, and the boards that Ms. Moore were on before would go to Mr. Wade?
I would ask Mr. Wade if that's something that he's amenable to.
I'm fine with taking those that she had.
Okay,
That's fine.
so can we do we do this one at a time, or can we just go ahead and?
Well, you can certainly substitute Mr. Wade in for Ms. Moore.
What we'll do, we'll go ahead, I will go ahead and be, I'll make a motion that Mr. Pugh be appointed to, Mr. Wade be appointed to the Transportation Planning Organization Policy Board, the Workforce Development Council, and the Community Development Block Grant Management Team.
What about the school board? Fourth from the top.
And the school board as well as a joint liaison. Joint board committee. There's a motion on the floor. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And now we'll go ahead and, Mr. Ayers, I'm going to make a motion that we appoint him to the Emergency Services Council. Is there any other boards?
That's the only one that I have.
All right. I'll make a motion, we appoint Mr. Ayers to the Emergency Service Council. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The next we have, we'll go ahead and appoint Ms. Tucker to the, Joint Board Committee, the liaison to the School Board, liaison to the Agricultural Committee, member of the Building Committee, and the PDC Local Government Council.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to suggest that to the PPC Council, I have not been able to attend those meetings because they're in Lynchburg. Perhaps someone that lives in the southern end of the county might be agreeable or may want to think about it and come back to us later about that one.
All right, we'll take that into consideration, and so we'll go ahead and remove that from your list of commissions, and we'll go ahead and have that motion on the table to appoint you to the various commissions that were
Thank you, sir.
just mentioned. There's a motion on the floor to appoint Ms. Tucker to the said committees. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? And then we're left with you, Mr. Martin, I believe. We'll go ahead and appoint Mr. Martin to the Building Committee, the Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Development Board.
That's it, right?
That would be it. The only other, I will go ahead and make the motion. I make a motion, we appoint Mr. Martin to those two boards. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? There's one more board on here. It's members of the Redistricting Committee.
At the last meeting, Mr. Chair, the board appointed you, but they also decided they wanted the chair. So now that you are the chair, we need a second person on that committee, a second board member.
I would, well, do you want to do that, Ms. Tucker?
Me?
Yeah, you.
No, I would say no, because it really doesn't affect my district. It would affect yours and Mr. Wade's, I believe.
We anticipate making changes to districts 4 and 5. Even
4
out
and
the
5.
population between them.
So,
It's Pew and Wade.
Pew and Wade. You want to do it?
Yeah, sure. I'll do it.
All right, well, I'll make a motion that we appoint myself and Mr. Wade to the Redistricting Committee. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All right, and now, okay, the last one is member of the Madison Heights Master Plan Contractor Advisory Group. One is needed.
I'd like to suggest Mr. Wade.
All right,
New man
Mr.
on the
Wade?
block.
I was gonna say, if Mr. Martin's amenable to it, I'll make a motion for him. So based on his experience, so I think it'd be useful for that.
And I will amend my suggestions that also say Mr. Tom Martin.
all right, you want to put that in the form of a motion?
Let him do it.
Okay.
I make a motion to appoint Mr. Martin to the Madison Heights, what's the,
Master Plan Committee.
Master Plan Committee. Thank you.
All right, there's a motion on the floor by Mr. Wade. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. All right, looks like you can use your expertise in the.
Congratulations, Mr.
Yes.
Martin.
Yeah, did it? Somebody needs to appoint me to the, social services board.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to appoint Mr. David Pugh to the, Social Services Liaison
And the,
Planning Commission.
and Planning Commission.
Liaison.
all right. There's a motion on the floor by Ms. Tucker. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. I'm glad we have that out of the way. That's a lot of different.
Well, we still need the PDC Local Government Council, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, but we punted that one. We tabled that one, to let a new member think about that.
Oh, okay. I just know I can't do it.
I can tell the board members that that is an important one. There have been many occasions where between the town and the county and our elected officials, sometimes chairing those meetings, we've acquired a great deal of funding. And we have a great deal of influence in the entire region through that board. So that's a very important council to sit on, or commission.
all right. Well, we'll bring that back up at our next meeting and have a discussion on that. Maybe you can bring us a little more information. The next item is item D. It's the, C, excuse me, the meeting schedule. At this point in time, we have a meeting on the first Tuesday of each month at 3 p.m. And then we have our second meeting at 7 p.m. on the third Tuesday of every month. This is a schedule that we had for last year. Is there any changes, or would you like to keep that schedule?
Mr. Chairman, I think that schedule worked quite well for both staff and board members, and I make a motion that we keep the same schedule.
Motion on the floor by Ms. Tucker. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. And we will move on to the adoption of the rules of procedure.
Mr. Chair, we have made no significant changes to the rules from last year. None have been proposed or even suggested.
Mr. Chair, I believe we spoke about this, but the meeting dates should
It's
coincide.
fixed.
Oh, it's already
correct. Should be
fixed.
correct on your screen.
Okay, very good. Then I would make a motion that we adopt the 2022 rules of procedure.
All right, we have a motion on the floor by Mr. Martin. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. So that change, that's all for the reorganization for 2022. We'll move on to our regular agenda. Our first item is the approval of the agenda. Are there any questions or changes that are needed? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, I make a motion that we approve the agenda as presented.
Motion on the floor by Mr. Ayers. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Motion carries. All right, next we have citizen comments. We have 2 people signed up for citizen comments. I just want to make everyone aware that we have rules. We like to keep it to 3 minutes, and you need to say your name and your address for the record. We have a Ruth Warner or a Daniel Warner, either or.
Daniel Warner, address is 885.
Can you please come up to the podium?
Right here, Mr. Warner. You're on YouTube.
Okay. Daniel Warner, address is 885 Bearfield Road in Amherst County. My concern as a taxpayer as well, but mostly as an American in the sense, and one that has a near and dear heart for agriculture and our wildlife, is development or potential development around Mill Creek Lake. I'm not sure what the status is on that. I know there is discussion, and what the voices would be, the polls or how that would affect wilderness. But I just recently finished an intern program with the Department of Interior. I developed some planning and developed a way of spotting AFs and shafts in Arizona, Nevada, and adjacent West State reclamation projects. And one of the things that we ran into is when we tap into a natural resource or we open, access to natural resource, we run the risk of, in a sense, evaporating that and destroying it. So then I put a concentration in my studies on maintaining wilderness. And right now, Amherst County has 3 lakes: Thrasher's, Millhouse, and Stonehouse. Mill Creek, Thrasher's, and Stonehouse. And I know the topography is rough, but what I'm understanding is there is a push for mountain biking or opening it up more for access. And just my concern and conclusion is we could jeopardize losing the pristine virginity and the natural resource we do have in that. And there's no point of return once we start. And I could elaborate more at a later time, but that's just my concern. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
We, at this point in time, I don't think we've discussed that. It would be a planning stage if something were to come about, so there would be various times to be able to come before the board and speak about what may or may not happen. It's all conjecture at this point, so.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
All right, is anyone else wishing to speak? All right, can you state your name and address for the record, please?
Yes, my name is Ruth Ann Warner, and I live on 885 Bearfield Road, Amherst, Virginia, same as Daniel Warner. I was very thankful for Dean Rogers and I believe Ryan Thacker to knock on my door and kind of give me some intentions of Parks and Recs and Water to develop around the lake of Mill Creek. So I appreciate your forthrightness, I really do. Immediately, I called all the neighbors that would be around, and of course, there's quite a few on Bearfield Road. The ones that are adjacent are Brockman, Monteply, Bill Englander, myself. I probably would have been more compliant to the whole idea because I like Claudia's idea of people swimming, and it's kind of like a little park, kind of like even Smith Mountain Lake there and what you've done. And I've heard good reports and bad as well on the various things. But the alarm came this summer that I was robbed, over $20,000 worth of stuff from my property. Some of the police department, even sheriff's department, thought maybe they came even from a boat or canoe and took stuff or threw it in the lake or whatever. Plus, I've been vandalized. Then for some other reason, there was like a fugitive, so there were 4 different counties, and I was wrapped around with police, and that is not why I live in Amherst County. In the realm of where I live, I go to Lynchburg every day, so that's a 45-minute trip there and back. And so you pay a heavy price to live here, to travel other ones, because of the sanctity and the peace and the safety, especially where I live. But my son is more of an expert on the environment of Mill Creek and the virginity of that lake and the beauty of it. And right in the corner where I live, we have bald eagles and babies, and you can go out and kayak and you see the fishermen, and they're just enjoying the serenity of that lake and the beauty of the wildlife. And I think there'll be a lot of destruction on disturbing that. And I can't articulate it like Daniel can, but I want you, and if there's a way to work together, as Dean said, that would be better. But I also know that there would be a huge uproar to that happening within the people that live around it. And also, I know my property, I don't know about Monteply or Brockman's, but you would affect the value of my property as well. And so I'm very concerned about it. And the first attitude I think I'd like to take is with Dean and Mr. Thacker, is what we can do to work together. Daniel had some ideas as he talked with Claudia to how to do wraparounds or whatever. Maybe there's a win-win where you're not disturbing all of that lake, but part of it for the bikers, maybe not. But we're very concerned, and to be honest, you'd probably have a big fight on your hands, and I'll get every environmentalist to help. So thank you, but it's probably better to work together if we can. But thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak? Seeing no one, we'll go ahead and close citizen comments. And at this time, we need a call to order of the Amherst County Service Authority. Let the record reflect, it is January 18th, 2022, and the time is 7:18 p.m. So you gentlemen could come up. Mr. Hopkins, you want to come up here and give us a little synopsis of our public hearing tonight for the Amherst County Service Authority rates?
Yes, sir. Love to. Good evening, everybody. Just a brief history. In 2002, the Service Authority Board initiated the policy of modest annual increases in water and sewer rates and fees to address inflation and asset management instead of raising them more, but in a sporadic fashion, which is harder on our customers. But since 2017, higher than desired adjustments have been necessary because of major cost capital improvements that we have to do and have to complete before 2028. The higher annual adjustments have been necessary to fund the financial reserves for repayment of the bonds that are going to be issued for those construction projects. Last September, the board received recommendations for 2022 water and sewer rates increases of 3.75% and 4.75% respectively from financial consultant Davenport and Company. Service Authority staff supported those recommendations, which were lower than the adjustments for the previous several years. The board, however, wanted to look at the possibility of slightly higher adjustments to raise the money for, to fund economic growth and development through water and sewer adjustments. So they asked Davenport to return to the October Service Authority Board meeting, at which time Mr. Taylor provided information on 5% and 6% possible adjustments, which would generate an estimated $400,000 for water and sewer system expansions. And then they asked him to come back again in November, which he did, with possible adjustments of 4.38% and 5.38%, which would generate an estimated $350,000 for expansions. At that meeting in November, the board directed staff to prepare an ordinance for supervisors' adoption, amending the county code to allow up to 5% and 6% rate adjustments for water and sewer, with the board having the option to approve lower rates. Ordinance 2021-0012 is in your packet. A public hearing was scheduled for the second supervisors meeting in November, but the Service Authority Board could not generate a quorum for that meeting, and also could not do the same for the December meeting, so we had to move it to tonight. Tonight's joint meeting and public hearing were publicly advertised twice in the month of December. The ordinance amends rates and fees as follows. For water, the rate increase is for up to 5%, from $5.65 per 100 cubic foot to as much as $5.93 per 100 cubic foot. The $5.93 figure would raise the average monthly bill for utility customers by $1.40. No increase in the basic service charge is proposed. For sewer, the rate increase is for up to 6%, from $8.46 per 100 cubic foot to as much as $8.97. The $8.97 figure would raise the average monthly bill by $3.55, and there is also a proposed $1 increase in the per billing basic service charge from $6 to $7. There's no proposed increase in the tap fees, which were adjusted in 2020 for the first time in 5 years. The proposed increases are maximums. The Service Authority Board can adopt and implement lesser increases if it so desires. And this is the lowest proposed combined rates increase since the 5% water and 7% sewer adjustments in 2017 to initiate the capital projects funding. The need for the adjustments can be broken down into 4 categories: operations, asset management, sanitary sewer extensions, and mandatory capital improvements projects. I'm not going to go into detail on that unless you all have any questions. A few more points I would like to point out. Number 1, the Service Authority's April 29th, 2021 report comparing Service Authority water and sewer rates and fees with those of neighboring public utilities and similar type and size utilities across Virginia shows the average Service Authority residential customer has a cost of water service lower than half of the compared utilities, and the cost of wastewater service is likewise lower than half of the compared utilities. Number 2, the Environmental Protection Agency cites water and wastewater services to be considered affordable if their total cost does not exceed 4.5% of an area's median household income. In 2019, which is the latest data, the county's MHI was $52,888. Breaking that down into monthly costs and taking 4.5% of that figure results in the amount of $198.33 being the maximum that would be paid for affordable water and wastewater services. For an average county residential household using a utility-wide average of 5,000 gallons per month and the proposed maximum rates increases proposed, the average water bill would be about $51.53. The average wastewater bill would be $63.30. The average combined bill would be $114.33, which is only 2.61% of the MHI, which is less than, just slightly over half of the EPA's 4.5% standard. Last point is, according to the Central Virginia Planning District Commission, during the process for 2018 Community Development Block Grants applications, the Virginia Department of Housing and Community Development said that ACSA rates are so low that without adjustment upward, they increase the difficulty of ACSA qualifying for future grants. All of this, in the opinion of the Service Authority staff, warrants the adoption of Ordinance 2021-0012. That's all I have, unless you all have any questions.
Any questions?
No, sir.
Seeing none, we'll go ahead and open the joint public hearing for ordinance 2021-0012. Is there anyone wishing to speak in regards to the public hearing? Anyone wishing to speak? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing, and we will need two motions. We'll need one from the Amherst County Service Authority, which we'll do first, and then after that, we'll need another one from the Board of Supervisors. Mr. Pero.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As we all know, providing water is a core service of public government. Since the times of earliest civilization, there's a community well where people could freely drink from the water source and hopefully have clean, pure water. It's imperative that local government or the government provide water for the people to preserve public health, safety, and welfare. I don't think anybody wants to raise rates, but we have to keep up with the quality of the water that's being provided, and we've got to make sure that the water being returned to the earth is of suitable quality as well. As I said, it's a core form of government, and it's something that we need to do, and we owe it to public health and safety to do so. So therefore, Mr. Chairman, I make the motion to adopt ordinance 2021-0012.
All right, you've heard it. There's a motion from Mr. Pero. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? That carries. And now we will need another motion from the Board of Supervisors.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the Amherst County Board of Supervisors adopt ordinance 2021-0012 as approved and recommended by the Amherst County Service Authority Board of Directors.
There's a motion on the floor by Mr. Ayers. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you, gentlemen. What we need to do now is go ahead and we'll adjourn the Amherst County Service Authority. I will go ahead and make the motion that we adjourn. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, gentlemen, for coming out here tonight. Appreciate it. All right, now we have another public hearing. It's the Coolwell Utility Easement. Mr. David Prophet. And this is just basically, from what I understand, is to get some upgrades to our electrical facility, our facility over there, some electrical upgrades.
That's what it is. We're currently in the process of making improvements at the Coolwell Convenience Center, which include the addition of 4 new electrical compactors and a small attendant shed. To do that, we need upgrades to the electrical service, and to accomplish that, Appalachian Power Company needs an easement for their power line. A copy of the easement is in your agenda along with a sketch. It's been reviewed by the county attorney, and it does require a public hearing before we can provide an easement to the power company.
All right, well, that's pretty straightforward. We just got to get an easement to the facility here. Is there any questions? If not, I'll entertain a motion. Oh, excuse me, we got to open the public hearing. All right, we'll go ahead and open the public hearing for the Coolwell Utility Easement. Is there anyone wishing to speak regarding the Coolwell Utility Easement? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing, and we'll move on to the board. Are there any further questions? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the county administrator execute the utility easement as presented.
There's a motion on the floor by Mr. Ayers. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Well, now we can get our upgrades at the Coolwell facility and hopefully have better flow and more capacity. All right, next we have the item number 8, the consent item. Let's see. Hold on. The consent agenda, which is basically the minutes for December 7th, 2021. Are there any changes, additions, or deletions?
Mr. Chairman, I move that the board adopt the minutes of December 7th, 2021.
There's a motion on the floor by Ms. Tucker. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, we're moving on through here. Now we have a special presentation. It's a commemorative resolution for Jennifer Moore, the former chairman of the board. She just recently sailed away into the sunset. I think she's getting married, and she has other things to do. She said she's been here and done that, and she's ready to move forward and build a new life with her husband. So we need to go ahead and, let's see here, pass this resolution. And
Mr. Chairman, I move that the board adopt commemorative resolution 2022-0001.
there's a motion on the floor by Mr. Ayers. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? And I assume you will be getting that.
To her, or make arrangements for her to come and have it presented to her. Yes, Mr. Chair.
Okay, next we're going to move on to old business. Number 10, the Planning Commission Charter Revision, Section 12.1, Youth Participation. Mr. Creasy? Good evening.
Chairman, Board, at the November 2021 Board of Supervisors meeting, you all were presented the Planning Commission Charter. This was due to an issue of how youth are identified, selected, participate, and or removed for the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission took this up at their December meeting, and I have now brought before you the recommended changes, and I'll quickly go over them. It's a quick paragraph identifying how youth will be selected and participate on the Planning Commission. This is section 12.1 of the Planning Commission Charter, Youth Participation. The new changes read as followed. It is the intention of the Planning Commission to not only encourage civic involvement of the youth of the county, but to also obtain their input in as many areas of the county government as possible. The term will be for one academic year, September through May. The Planning Commission members are responsible for interviewing and selecting applicants for these positions. These positions are also non-voting, and the mandatory requirements for a youth participant are they are a resident of Amherst County and between the ages of 16 and 20. The process for selecting the youth participants, which is also being written into the charter, are as for May, they will advertise the position. July, they'll interview and select. August, they will have a orientation. And then in September, they will begin their participation on the Planning Commission. Are there any questions for staff?
Any questions? I think we've been over this several times. Now it's here, and we appreciate the work, and I think we can move forward. So thank you. All right, Board. What's your pleasure?
Mr. Chairman, I move that the board approve the changes to section 12.1 of the Planning Commission Charter as presented.
There's a motion on the floor by Mrs. Tucker. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Next, we have use of Arpa Funds. Ms. McBride.
Alrighty, so a while back you all discussed projects and a spending plan, and we waited, and at the 11th hour the U.S. Treasury has finally given us a final rule, and they changed the rules. So now you have a little more flexibility. Anything that's $10 million or less can be claimed as revenue loss, where we don't have to fit into those pockets of projects that have to be healthcare, have to be, there's like 6 or 7 different ones. So, do you want to start with the list, or do you want to start with the plan?
Go to the list.
So, before you is the original list that you guys put together. The ARPA projects that are funded are the ones on the left. The ones that aren't funded are on the right. Now, the reason that we had to separate this money is we only had like about $700,000 in revenue loss. Now we have $6 million and some change.
Which means, Mr. Chair, that there are no restrictions on how you use that. You can use that as if it came from your general fund, however you want to use it.
I still have to kind of relate it to COVID, but the revenue loss helps it fall into that pocket pretty easily.
So we only put this up there. I mean, you're not restricted to this list at all. These were the ideas that we brought to you, and that you culled it down to the bunch on the left. The only requirement at this point is that you not exceed $6.1 million in total. Although, maybe we need to call up the other list and show.
So
what's
you all have
committed.
made some prior obligations, a little bit of it has been spent. Some contracts have been let before. It came to my attention, that I needed to bring it to you all for one more pass, especially with the change in the rule. And we need to go to a public hearing because we exceed and need to do a budget amendment public hearing.
Does that make sense?
Somewhat.
Well,
Mr. Martin?
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair. So the bulk of the 6 million, we were going ahead and I believe accelerating $1 million to the Service Authority.
Yes, sir.
Right? Okay.
So I've got that up there for you, so you can kind of,
Yeah,
Yeah,
there we go.
okay.
Getting to a point. All right. We've got 2.8 for broadband, which I don't think we ought to mess with. We got the PPE and the unemployment and other COVID. And then down in the other part of that list, we have, another $1 million for water and sewer infrastructure, which is to try and really promote some economic development. So the point I'm trying to get to is I think when we went through this list, we did a lot of work on it. There's really not a lot of funding left once you take those things into account. And I guess I'm fine with leaving the list the way that it is where I'm at.
All right.
I had a couple of questions.
Sure.
Mr. Chairman. Can we have, Mr. Hopkins, can you come up here? I got a question for you. So the potential development in the southern end of the county,
Yes, ma'am.
any back of the envelope kind of idea of how much that would cost for the sewer lines out there?
Well, I've got Hurt and Profit doing a PER right now for the initial project for putting a sewer between Thomas Road and Kings Road on River Road, along with the pump station and force main. Right now, I'm thinking that's, if we don't hit rock, we might be able to do that for $1 million, a little bit less, or maybe a little bit more. Now, the sewer is going up into the, leaving that backbone sewer to actually serve developed properties to the north. We haven't even thought about that yet. I mean, I have talked to one developer who I was working with on this project, and the Service Authority Board asked me to make sure that any developer I talk to understands that this initial project is just for that sewer and pump station along River Road. There's no commitment by the supervisors, the Service Authority Board, EDA, anybody to help with extending these sewers up into these neighboring properties for development. And that's not to say that nobody will provide that assistance, but just there's no commitment at this point.
When you say neighboring properties, you're talking about existing households?
No, ma'am. I'm talking about there's at least 4 undeveloped properties up there totaling about 160 acres. And I've been working with one developer who's already looking at 2 of them, and he's already got a preliminary plan, extensive preliminary plan set up for it. And I don't know where he's taken with that. He showed it to me and said that's what he's working on.
I'm not sure I got my question answered. Help me out, Mr. Rogers. You know what I'm trying to get at.
Mr. Hopkins, that project that you're just speaking of, obviously you all are looking at getting a service line from down to River Road. From this potential project to that line to take care of the sewer, there obviously has been no commitment. They've made none, but what would something like that cost if the county were to look to help support that investor or that project to come to fruition on that piece of property? That is the question, I think. Am I correct?
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to
For us
ask.
to help facilitate that connection, what kind of money, do you have any idea what would be be looking at?
No, sir, not right now. I haven't really looked at it. Nobody's asked me to look at it, but I'd be glad to do that for you if you'd like.
Well, Mr. Chair, could I ask it a different way? Hey, we ask it, we ask it 4 different ways. We might get the answer that we're looking for. Without putting this line down River Road with the pump station and this and that. Without that line, this development that we're speaking of couldn't happen.
That's correct.
Okay.
Actually, when I came on in 2016 with the Service Authority, I met with this same developer, and I've met with him and people working with him at least once annually about trying to develop these two properties. And the stumbling block, according to him, and that I saw right away, had lasted for years was the lack of sewer. There was just no way to get sewer in there. But after I looked at it for a while, I thought that there might be a way. And from working with him and considering it further, it looks like it's possible. It's just going to depend on whether or not we can get the easements and how much rock we might hit, which would substantially drive up the cost.
So this $1 million is kind of putting in the backbone
Yes,
of the
sir.
system.
But you don't know how much more would be needed to make it a feasible project for the developer. Is that right?
That's correct. Haven't looked at it yet, but I'd be glad to do that if you'd like me to.
Well, what else would you need if you put it in the backbone of the system? It would be the developer's responsibility to hook onto the backbone at that point in time.
Well, and that's what the board wanted me to convey to this developer, is that the money that the county is putting into this backbone project is only for the backbone project, and it's going to be up to the developer to develop funding for any tributaries to go into their development. And whether or not they can get funding assistance from the county or the Service Authority, the EDA, or whoever, it's still going to be up to them to put that together.
But this is one of my top priorities. I mean, I feel so strongly about being able to develop that southern end of the county. I would hate to see another opportunity get away from us.
I agree with you, man.
I think it's worth, while we're doing this, to go ahead and look to see what the option would be to facilitate that potential project if that developer decides to move forward. At least there are some numbers on the table to give them an idea, us an idea, and how we make it happen. We can discuss it at that time, but I think those numbers are going to be of interest before they move forward, and I can understand why. That's.
Well, Mr.
Go ahead.
Mr. Chair, I'm sorry. I mean, I don't disagree with either of you yet. This is $1 million in the right direction to developing that property. I don't see us, and I agree. It's perfectly fine for us to figure out how much more it might take to get to this trunk line, but are you saying that we should take it from other ARPA projects? From this funding, or?
You can't do that anyway.
Well, I know, I'm asking them.
We can't do that anyway.
So,
If you feel comfortable with the funding that's in place to take care of the trunk line, that's well and good, but Mr. Hopkins is here and we're discussing that. I think right now we're not going to commit to what the connection would be to get to that line if this developer decides to move forward, but we obviously probably need to go ahead and start looking, if you're working on that, looking at the options of how the connectivity would be and what additional money would be looked at. How we come up with that money can be a later discussion, but I
Okay.
think we at least need to have a number on the table to know
Yeah,
what we'd be faced with.
that's fine.
Yeah, you said it much better than I was trying to.
I'm fine with what you all are saying, as well as the priority list that we've put in place. We worked really
And I'm
hard
fine with that.
to get these numbers here. But $1 million on the trunk line, that's pretty good start, I would say. Yeah, I mean,
Sure
that's.
appreciate it.
But I mean, there's a lot that has to happen before even that takes place. We got to get some buy-in from the people that are going to develop the property. So. Is there any further questions for Mr. Hopkins? What about the ARPA funds? I'm fine with the way
Have
they.
that been scheduled, I'm fine with that, we keep it in order.
All right, I think we've got a consensus on the board? Everybody all right with that?
Yep. So you're directing us to hold to advertise for a public hearing for the budget amendment?
Let's see here.
I think I wrote it that way.
We do have a motion.
Yeah, I've got a motion.
You want to make?
All right, I'll go ahead and move that the ARPA spending plan be adopted as agreed and that staff schedule a public hearing to receive public input on the proposed use of the funds. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Ms. McBride. We appreciate it. Mr. Hopkins, thank you. All right, we are up to the Davenport funding options for the high school renovations.
Yes, Mr. Chair. So you've had at least one meeting so far talking about the school's plan to renovate the high school. You heard from Davenport. You heard from Dr. Arnold about the project. We need, the school board needs to know after this meeting, if possible, whether you're, what amount of money, what size of project you want to go for. So that you've got the two options, well, the two different size projects and the four different funding or options for each one. And we need the board's direction. So Dr. Arnold is here to answer questions, and R.T. Taylor from Davenport is here, and Stacy can come back. If you go to the Davenport presentation in your attachments, page 15 sort of has all the options on one page and their cost to help refresh your memory of where you stand and what each one will cost. My sense from the board was that you wanted to go for the $19 million renovation and get as much funding as possible while the money is cheap and put it to use for the schools. And you can see there that option C is the least expensive. That's only a $28,000 increase to our current debt service line. Option D is the next most expensive at a $40,000 increase, and it goes up from there. The only options that we have that cost nothing, by that I mean no further increase to our debt service, is the half project, the $13 million project, and I think it's C and D. You can see up there the bottom line are blank, but that's the $13 million project. The $19 million project is there. Now, I think, Mr. Martin, you had questions about what was included?
Yes.
And so, Dr. Arnold, can you come up and address those questions?
Welcome.
Thank you. So in the $19 million number, so everything that we presented to you the last time was included. What was not included was that property.
Correct.
And I believe Dr. Wells has a number
And
for you on that.
Mr. Chair, if I may, that's one of my biggest concerns is we do all of this and then we don't have that parking area anymore. So I think we should at least seriously consider how much more that is. I assume you might have a cost for that.
So if we look at the property we already own, which is right next door to across, neighbors borders that property, it'd be between $200,000 and $300,000 to turn it into a parking lot. The actual property that we're talking about was over. He was asking over $300,000 that piece of property, a little bit over three and a quarter.
So are you saying we could rebuild that parking area on property that's already owned by the county?
We already have property that borders that to the north, I guess, of his property line that we surround his property.
And and we could do that for about $300,000.
Our architect said between $200,000 and $300,000.
Okay. So instead of 19.1, it's really if we did that, it's 19.4.
Correct.
And Davenport. What does that do? Can you magically find 300,000?
So let's take a step back. So we're looking at the $19.1 million options, which is under the scenario 2 umbrella. I think the upshot here is if we're borrowing additional $300,000 for construction on land we already own, is that what I'm understanding? I don't think it's going to necessarily impact your debt service as we've sort of layered in here. We can update the modeling for you and focus in on that $19 million one, but it's not going to move the needle per se on this analysis, if that makes sense, because you're bumping up, yes, your principal amount by $300,000, but the interest expense on that differential is not going to swing the needle, if that makes sense.
I understand.
So, and the other caveat in here is, interest rates are what they are at the time we borrow. So right now it's still, we're ticking up over the past several weeks, but we're still at very, very low interest rates. It'll just depend on what we get in the time in the market. I know that VPSA plans to price their bonds in in mid-April. So
I want to make sure that the rest of the board understands what I'm talking about. So if we build the new auditorium, it's going to take up the majority of the property of that parking area in the back, which is used for community events. It's kind of, I know you guys have drop off and this and that, but and it's also used for parking for like football games and that kind of stuff. And I think we would be amiss if we went and did this entire project and not think about that, redoing that parking area. So at least my point of view is if we're going to move forward with the entire project, we should include.
So it's shadowed in the phase 1A. There's the property.
So that's.
Thank you, sir.
Still not exactly where I would like to see it, but it's better than nothing, I guess.
Mr. Martin,
Sir.
coming back to your question, I just ran quick math on the HP, but the answer would be roughly about $20,000 per year extra on top of your annual debt service to fully amortize that $300,000 at roughly 2%, which is where our numbers were when we ran this.
So is the proposed parking lot phase 1A, is that what we're talking about?
That shadowed area will be where the parking lot could possibly
That-
go. Yes, ma'am. Could go there. And that would support your baseball and softball activities because of where it's located, both baseball and softball field, as well as football. The property in between that and our parking lot is the property we were discussing earlier.
Can I?
Go ahead, Mr.
Rogers. From the, if it was possible to get the property owner back to his original price, which is probably closer to fair market value for an empty property with a derelict structure on it, would that change where you want to do the parking lot? Would you move the parking lot onto that property?
Yes, sir.
So, is there any sense for how firm the owner is, that he might be convinced that, look, we're just gonna build on the other side of you, and so you might as well sell it for what we want because you'll be surrounded by pavement? I mean, has that been broached with him? The last thing we need is to build there and then have him give up and say, okay, I'll take it. And then, of course, then there's eminent domain as a possibility to get it at fair market value rather than its 100% markup. Would that make a difference to you? Would you prefer that property to all the way at the back?
Yes,
You would?
absolutely. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
So, okay, so if we chose, I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, so if we chose to go forward, increasing by 300,000, we still have a little bit of time to negotiate and design, correct? Because this could be a latter phase.
Absolutely correct.
Well, so this wasn't originally part of the project, right? The parking lot, so we could not fund that if we looked at it. I mean, you weren't planning on having that parking lot there.
That's absolutely correct. What I'm telling you, my view is that is a mistake.
And it very well may be, but you never know what. You're gonna pay $300,000 for the property, and then you're gonna probably put another $300,000 in the parking lot, because the topography is very similar on both parcels of
But
land.
you own this, we own this land.
Yeah,
that
we
you're-
already own the one
Right.
piece, yes.
One A we already own, yes, sir.
Right. I thought a long time ago when the school board did not buy that property, they were not thinking well. Put it that way. But,
I think we're probably moving into some discussions that
Closed session.
we might want to have in closed session, so, yeah.
Anybody else?
I
have
do,
any thoughts?
I've got a question for Dr. Reynolds.
Go ahead.
So,
Dr. Arnold.
the 19.1, whatever it is, for the whole project, how much room inside the school does that give us for vocational activities? Or technical, that type of thing?
Yeah, so the addition will allow us to move all of what is currently the dining room, right? So if you know where the dining room is, that will all become classroom space, because they're gonna move everything forward, the food court, and then out into a new dining space, which is a part of the addition. So that part that goes towards the current auditorium would be classroom space. And so that would be 4 classrooms that could fit there. And what the original plan is to move some of the classrooms that are down in the CTE wing that are not CTE courses that have been there for quite some time, move those up there, and then that opens up the space in our CTE wing to become the CTE courses that we would want to have down there, because they're the concrete floors, the bays, that kind of thing that would allow for pretty flexible space. We would also have the current auditorium as space as well. There'd have to be some work done in there, but that would open it up for some more space.
So does this give us enough room for our CTE, all of our CTE activities? Or are we gonna say, well, if we had this much more space, we could add these classes? Is this gonna give us everything we need for these kids that don't wanna go to college, but wanna learn a trade? That's my
Well, and
question.
I don't think it's completely space that limits us too. It's a personnel, it's, those kinds of things. And that's why we've entered into the Regional CTE Academy, is so we can meet all of the needs, whether it's in our buildings or sending them to CVCC. Gives them all of those options.
But this would add a large amount of space to our CT programs, as well as some redesign of our welding program. So right now, we can't do but 15 students in welding. So some redesign of the welding shop would add us to about 5 more bays for welding, which would give us, 20 students in welding at a time. So it does do some redesign down there, as well as adding additional classroom space for future programs.
I mean, I'm asking because I'd sit on the front end of this to many of the school board members that if we have not solved for the CTE and vocational, I won't support this. That's that important to me,
So
that we take care of these kids.
It adds 1 large bay in vocational and right now we're looking at some more agriculture-based classes. We'd also have room to put in a cosmetology lab. Then we'd also have another several thousand square feet of additional space for programs that we can add as we need to add them.
Okay.
All right. Any other questions? I originally, I was surprised that we could take on that amount of debt without taking on raising taxes, basically. When you look at this, you can actually do it. I was more in line with the 13.8 million. You could do that project and maybe come back and do the other one. But with the way inflation's going and the Federal Reserve is going to continue to raise rates, I would assume, I mean, that's the way it looks, they're going to have a hedge against inflation. I assume it would be probably prudent to take out the 19.1 and do the project while the money is cheaper. Although, it hurts me to spend, to do this, but it is probably the smart thing and the right thing to do.
Or are we up to 19.4?
I mean, have we decided on that? Are we gonna do 19?
We haven't decided. No.
Yeah, so I know there was 19.1 or 19.4. I know it makes about a $20,000 difference.
And then we're, again, 8 million is coming from us.
Yeah.
And there's, going back, just, I can't remember if y'all were here last time on the discussions of how that $8 million was to be used, but just as a reminder, on scenarios C and D, that's where we took the $6.6 million, that is ARPA funds, use that immediately to buy down the project or toward the project, so we borrow less. The other $1.3 million is what we're going to be using to strategically buy down that impact over the next several years, and in conjunction with wrapping some of that debt. The way we're able to keep it cost effective is by virtue of wrapping it around the next couple of years where your debt drops off. We're actually shortening those two options too, to mitigate some of that additional interest expense by wrapping the principal. The other reminder, just real quickly, is after this meeting, one of the VPSA deadlines is the application process, which is toward the end of February. So ahead of that, the school board would need to take action to, number one, make application, to approve making application to the VPSA spring pool, and then number two, asking the county to issue its GO debt. Now, by virtue of the school board adopting that resolution over the next couple weeks ahead of that VPSA application due date, it's not hemming you into proceeding, rather it's getting you a place in line for the pool. The county would actually have some more time before the 1st of April to make their ultimate decision and take action on their authorizing resolution. So just trying to be cognizant of the timing. If we get past certain deadlines, it would push us to the fall pool, for example. But I think there's some projects in here I think we've talked about that like to get started this summer, spring or summer timeframe. So just highlighting the timeline.
Mr. Chairman. Mr. Martin, obviously you've been in discussions with this in the expansion of the school building, and obviously we'll be utilizing some of the existing parking lot. We need to have the discussion. Are we going 19.1 or 19.4 in order to provide or replace the parking that would be taken away from the site up there to do these additions? Obviously, it's not going to minimize people that would be coming there, so it's probably going to maximize the fee, especially with the new auditorium. So I reckon that's the discussion we need to have first. Is the board comfortable with going with a 19.4? And I take that's where that's come from, when realized the expansion is going to take away a lot of the parking. So
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
One more question. I think this might be for Mr. Rogers. It might be for you. But if we approved up to 19.4 this evening, could we drop it back?
Absolutely. Okay. You have, even after when the county board, forgive me for stuttering through this, but when the county board goes to approve its resolutions, being a little presumptive here, that would be done obviously before, call it the 1st of April. Even then, if you would approve up to a certain amount, that gives you a little bit of cushion, let's say, you wouldn't have to finalize that number until, call it a week or two before VPSA prices their bonds. You can always back it down. They let us have that flexibility to back it down. What you run into is if you approve, let's call it a lower amount, and then want to go higher, you have to circle back, get the approvals in place, and keep in mind, it's a credit underwriting process too with VPSA. So when you submit the application February 28th, that number would be up to a certain amount that includes a cushion so that you wouldn't have to go back to VPSA and get further approval after their board meets in mid-March. So the answer, I went around my elbow, but you can back it down.
Right. So, Mr. Ayers, I think that, you know, if the board decided that the parking lot is in fact important, which I do believe it is, I believe where it's shown on this map is not the right location. I think that may give us some time to have some future discussions about the final location, right? And if it doesn't work out, then we can drop back to the 19.1. But I do think it's worth exploring. And, you know, if we chose to go to 19.4 this evening, at least it would keep our possibilities open.
The other option, which I don't know, is if you curtail the project at about 300,000.
Well, that's true.
Once it goes out for bid, I mean.
Yeah, it is.
Numbers may come in a little lower than what's anticipated. so.
Very well could.
I doubt that.
All right. Well, what's your pleasure, board? Mr. Wade, you have anything?
I think we go ahead and include the additional 300. So bringing it to 19.4.
It
It makes
seems we
sense.
have somewhat of a consensus, so, Mr. Martin?
Yeah, let me get back to that.
There's a motion.
And that's option 2C, is that what we're going for?
Funding option C.
C.
2C.
It would be C or D. There's just a slight nuance to how we're doing C and D, but it's effectively structuring the debt and trying to curtail the back end to mitigate some of the interest expense.
Yeah, the two part is the 19.3.
2C.
Scenario 2 is the $19.1 million scenarios. All A through D. C and D are just how we're going to structure it. I don't think you have to necessarily decide that this evening.
Okay, so Mr. Chair, I move that the board direct staff to undertake all steps necessary to acquire $19.4 million.
And using the funding option,
He's saying,
don't you gotta use the C or D funding?
I don't think we have to be that prescriptive in your motion this evening. I think we can come back and.
Okay, gotcha.
We want to do some further analysis on the slightly higher amount and make sure we've got it dialed in.
All right, thank you.
I think we have time for the exact scenario.
Okay, thank you. Well, there is a motion on the floor by Mr. Martin. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, still some legwork to do, but, we're getting there.
Thank you.
All right. All right, next we have new business. Miss Linda Warner, will you come up here and give us an update on the Nationwide Retirement Solutions?
Sure. Nationwide Retirement Solutions Financial Planner Lynn Robinette contacted me back in December regarding two possible additions to the county's 457B deferred compensation plan for county employees. I serve as the plan administrator, and I have to say right up front, I am not a subject matter expert in deferred comp. So Stacy said she would help with any questions you all might have, and we can always bring Ms. Robinette back to another meeting too if there's something we can't answer. But the two options are, one is adding a Roth IRA, which would be an after-tax option for employees. I was surprised to find out that in some cases doing the after-tax option will actually produce a greater return for employees. And so that's one reason that she has discussed this with employees as a possible option for them. But we did not have one, so I told her I would talk to you about that. And then the other one is called an NWIPP fund, and the purpose of it is to add a group fixed annuity to the plan. And what this does is it allows more tenured employees who are closer to retirement to have less risk when they're investing their funds, because as you get closer to retirement, you don't want to risk your nest egg. And so this would benefit our more tenured employees that are getting close to retirement. And to my knowledge, we have not made any changes to this plan in the almost 6 years I've been here. I don't know if we've made any in the past before I came, but this is not something we do very often.
I have a question. I mean, this seems like it just gives people two more options as far as retirement. Everybody should be familiar with like a Roth IRA or what have you, but who actually, do you have to go and get a vendor? Who does this?
Nationwide Retirement Solutions is our vendor.
So what is the cost to do they charge the actual employee? What is the fee, the cost?
Yeah, the fees are built into the return on investment that employees make.
Okay.
So there's not like upfront fees. It's part of the investment cost of their money.
There is no cost to the county.
That's what.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Just
And
more
this
options.
financial planner, is this financial planner from Amherst? Where's Ms. Robinette from?
I am not sure where her office is. For some reason, I'm thinking Lynchburg. And David, do you know where their corporate office is? So this contract's very old. We've been with Nationwide at least 20 years. Do you remember?
That's okay. I was just wondering.
Okay.
Do you have any further questions? All right, I don't see an issue with it. It's just two more options for the employees, although they could go out and get a Roth IRA without, dealing with Nationwide. I'll go ahead and move that the board directs staff to add Roth 457B option and the Nationwide Index Principal Protection Group fixed annuity to the county's 457B deferred compensation plan. Motion on the floor. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Ms. Warner.
Thank you.
Thanks, Linda.
All right, next we have the county administrator's report.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair. We have a couple seats on the EDA that need to be filled. The term of Calvin Kennan from District 3 ends today, and the term of Andrew Proctor of District 1 also ends today. We've advertised a position. Both of these men have requested to be extended for a new 4-year term, but there has been no other expressions of interest by anyone else.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, ma'am.
I personally know Mr. Kennan and Mr. Proctor, and they've served very, very well. And I know that the director of the EDA came and spoke to us earlier today, and she is supportive of those two reappointments. With the board's approval, I'd like to make a motion that we reappoint those two individuals to serve on the EDA.
All right, any other discussion? There's a motion on the floor by Ms. Tucker. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All right.
The next-
Congratulations. I know Mr. Kennan's been actively involved. It seems like he has a interest in bettering the county, so he's definitely got my vote.
The next item, Mr. Chair, is with regard to Amherst County Regulation 1-3. That covers our internal board-created boards, committees, commissions, and councils where you appoint citizens to serve. As a reminder, the county regulations are simply guidance issued by the county administrator to his staff on how the staff are to deal with whatever the subject is. And so what's unique and interesting about this regulation is that it contains the charters, all the charters that exist for all 16 of those boards, committees, commissions, and councils. And there are some legislative bodies that don't yet have a charter, and they're continuously being updated, as we did tonight, for the Planning Commission and their charter. But it is time to sort of reauthorize this regulation. We've taken all the charters that we've been able to collect and make sure that they're current, and so we're simply updating the regulation and asking your approval of this regulation. Now, normally I just issue regs and let you know about it, but this one deals with the bodies that you create. And the charters explain the objectives that you want your bodies to achieve. And so that's why that's before you tonight. And I would like you to simply reauthorize it the way it's been proposed there. And it continues to update as we modify charters and add charters to it.
All right, thank you, Mr. Rogers. You've heard, you've pretty much heard the spiel. Are there any questions for Mr. Rogers? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll move that the board adopt ACR 1-3, internal boards, committees, commissions, and councils.
There's a motion on the floor by Mr. Wade. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
The next item, Mr. Chair, is a change to HR Regulation Chapter 7 to get us to match up with state law when should we ever have the need for a mass layoff. I mean, it hasn't yet occurred in the county's history. Mr. Martin has asked for a modification to the language to assure that I bring this topic to the board before we ever did have a mass layoff, and that's fine. Linda, I didn't get a chance to see the language that you sent to me today. Do you have that handy, or is that will I find that in my email? And I can propose that change right here and now. Let's see, Warner, there we go. No, wrong Warner. Layoff policy, okay. So, the way it currently reads, it says the county may lay off employees for lack of available work or funds at any time. The layoff decision is made by the county administrator. Here's the insertion, Mr. Martin. The decision made by the county administrator, who will notify the Board of Supervisors prior to making the layoff decision. It then continues on to say, whenever practicable, employees will be given 2 weeks' notice of an impending layoff. The county follows state and federal policy regarding layoffs. County employees are hired at will and have no layoff rights beyond those required by state and federal policy. Recall after a layoff is determined by the county administrator and is based on, recall after a layoff is determined by the county administrator and is based on legitimate county business needs rather than seniority or order of layoff or that sort of thing. I would certainly not do this anyway without bringing such a monumental action to the board to give you the chance to stop me. But now it's in writing that you will have that opportunity.
All right, any more questions?
No, I'm more comfortable with that language. Thank you so much.
Yes, sir. So, Mr. Chair, I would like to propose that we adopt that regulation as it's been modified with that addition to it.
All right, well, I move that the board adopt the modified layoff policy to Chapter 7 of the HR regulation. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Next, we have some information regarding public safety and salaries.
Yes, sir. A few weeks ago, an article came out in the newspaper about the city of Lynchburg exploring the increase of its starting salaries for its police officers to $50,000. Board, that came up in a board meeting and board member comments, and staff was asked to look at that to see how that would affect county's ability to hire and retain. Linda Warner conferred with colleagues of hers all over the state and quickly put together a chart of starting salaries of a whole list of localities along with the bonuses that they offer, and you have that in your package. If I can summarize it, our starting salary for our deputies is $42,300. It is amongst the counties in our region. So when we look at Bedford, Campbell, Appomattox, Nelson, Ours is still the highest. I know that the sheriff is at 100% manning, or was about a week ago, and is not having as much of a challenge recruiting as he was before. So my view is that because in the policing community, it is fairly well understood that there's a significant, and maybe Mr. Ayers can attest to this, there's a significant difference between policing in a city and policing in county. And the counties generally don't try to compete with the city because it is so different. Those who want to take on that kind of work, those kinds of risks, and those types of offenses need to be compensated for that. And those that work in the county apparently are willing to work for less because we're full up manpower-wise. So I don't, your concerns are legitimate, that we need to keep an eye on our retention and our recruiting ability. I can tell you that the other county administrators are all eyeing us now, trying to leapfrog up to us or up past us, and that's what they're going to be attempting to do in this new budget cycle. So we're sort of out in front, and it's not a comfortable lead, and it's not anywhere near $50,000, but I feel secure in it for the time being. We're also doing well in our recruiting with our EMTs, and filling those positions too.
All right, well, that's some good information. Thank you, Ms. Warner. You know, you've got all the different localities and counties. I know that took a little while to do, so we appreciate the legwork on that. Mr. Martin?
Mr. Chair, I would just ask that we continue to monitor this, not only on the law enforcement, but also on the public safety side as we move forward.
It'll be interesting to see what the other counties do here through this budget season. So we'll know, you know, June, July, what they're doing, whether their boards are going to do what we did, and that is bring their salaries back up to snuff. And just so the board knows, just to keep up with the state salaries, I'll be proposing a 5% cost of living increase. I think CPI is now at 7%. So I'll put 5%. Well, that, you know, add 45% to our 42, and that raises that significantly too. So it may not be keeping up with the cost of inflation, but in terms of our competition for manpower, I think we'll be doing well.
All right, well, that inflation doesn't sound too good. All right, I believe that's all you have, Mr. Rogers.
Yes, sir.
Correct? Now we have a county attorney's report. Do you have anything?
I have nothing, sir.
All right. We're going to go on to liaison and committee reports. I was not able to attend the planning commission meeting. Mr. Bryan is not here tonight. I don't think anything of real significance came up at the meeting. Usually we would have had a public hearing tonight on one of the issues, but I did not see that. If any of you all would like to speak on your various committees, you're more than welcome to.
Yeah, I do have something to talk about for the Ag Committee. Two things. One, the Ag Committee will be coming forward to this board soon to ask for funding for next year. It'll probably be, Stacy, $30,000, if I remember that correctly. They just did a great job last year. They started late because we didn't even know if we were going to have a fair. So the fact that they're getting, you know, closer and closer to break even is really good. Secondly, the Ag Center with the joint venture with Nelson and Amherst County. Nelson has asked us to come to their meeting next month, their first meeting. They're asking the Nelson County Farm Bureau, Amherst County Farm Bureau, interested stakeholders. Jimmy and I are going in support, and we'll see where we end up there. But that's the next upcoming thing there. That's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I mentioned this briefly at the last meeting, but the Parks and Rec Board, under leadership from Mr. McNally, is doing a great job working with that board and Parks and Rec in general, is starting to work on a 10-year kind of master plan. They reviewed a 10-year project list, believe they still had some more work to do, but they're very enthused about that work, so.
All right.
As far as Emergency Services Council, we had a meeting last Wednesday night. It was very well attended, discussion about matters between emergency service provider agencies for the county, but I know they have been working diligently on Station 3 at Manellis and the Elam Station to get that renovated so that it could be utilized for manned staff there as well, and getting fairly close to getting that project completed.
I have a question on that. I had a question for someone. What was the appropriation for that job? Does anyone know that?
I think 60 or 70.
Was it 8 for the renovation?
At Station 3,
Yeah.
Manellison Station. I want to say, was it 80,000?
I thought it was
60 or 80,000. Yep.
Okay, so it was 63. Yes, sir. Okay, all right. I was just double checking. I had someone ask me, and I just wanted to give them the right answer. So thank you, Sam. All right. Well, we will go on now to citizen comments. Is there anyone wishing to speak? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and close citizen comments. And are there any matters from members of the board? Mr. Wade?
I have none.
Ms. Tucker?
I don't have anything.
Mr. Ayers?
I have nothing.
Mr. Martin?
No, sir.
I have nothing either. I will make a motion to adjourn. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
You got out your first one unscathed. Nobody pinch it or kick it.
Well, you know what? I took the time.